OMG. After years of fighting and tension, my sister finally sent a heartfelt apology. But can I really forgive her? I am using a throwaway account as she is active on Reddit, and given the specific details I plan to share, I wouldn't be surprised if she deduces this is about her. Nonetheless, I feel compelled to attempt this. I apologize for the length of this message. Explaining my situation is quite challenging. I am a 34-year-old female and the youngest of 3 sisters. I have never been particularly close with my eldest sister, who is 43 years old. Throughout my childhood, we more or less coexisted without much interaction. However, as I transitioned into adulthood, her behavior towards me changed. For various reasons, we did not always share the same living space, but when we did, we often ended up in heated arguments, typically loud enough that our parents would have to step in. Physical altercations were uncommon, usually limited to shoving or throwing objects around, not directed at one another. I am not proud of my conduct during these disputes and have long been aware that living with her long-term would likely be impossible. From my viewpoint, it often seemed like she would impose her opinions on situations, regardless of whether or not she was informed about them. Her tone came across as condescending at best and intentionally hurtful at worst. She frequently used expressions like, "Someone your age should be able to handle this," or, "What do you have to stress about?" These comments tended to completely dismiss my feelings or struggles in specific circumstances. Even if it was a matter I had never discussed with her, she would still learn about it from our father, as they shared everything. To address any potential questions, this dynamic existed solely between the two of us. She has always been attentive to our middle sister, who is 39 years old, especially after she became physically disabled due to an accident that greatly hindered her mobility. Our parents would intervene during our conflicts, but generally only enough to separate us and help us calm down. No one ever sat down with us to discuss our issues rationally, seeking to understand the underlying problems. Our father often attempted to facilitate our interaction, not necessarily for reconciliation, but for us to come together. He has told us since childhood, "One day, we will be gone, and it will just be the 3 of you. You will need one another." Due to this perspective, it was not until recently that I managed to persuade him that my oldest sister and I would almost certainly never reconcile if she continued to treat me the same way. Around the year 2017, I had to move back in with our parents and our middle sister. My oldest sister lived nearby and frequently visited our father, given their close relationship. This arrangement sometimes resulted in further conflicts between my oldest sister and me, but there was never any serious effort made to resolve our differences. There was one incident when my post-traumatic stress disorder was severely triggered, and during that time, she and our parents treated my response as if I were a young child throwing a temper tantrum, justifying their actions to our middle sister while I struggled to breathe through my tears. I do not recall the exact timeline of events, but somewhere between my move back and the details I will outline in the following paragraphs, my oldest sister was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. While this diagnosis clarified much of her behavior, her journey towards proper treatment was fraught with challenges, and she did not make significant efforts to mend our relationship, resulting in no change between us. 2 years ago, a major confrontation occurred. My oldest sister and I engaged in the worst argument we have ever had, over a cat of all things. She wanted to take the cat, but our middle sister, her adopted daughter, and I firmly believed that if my oldest sister were allowed to take and keep it, the cat would ultimately perish due to inadequate care, which had previously occurred at least twice. There is some disagreement within the family about who instigated the violence during that confrontation. I was blocking her way and holding the cat carrier's handle to prevent her from leaving, yelling at our parents and my oldest sister. I believe my actions were not violent, as I had no intention of causing physical harm to anyone. However, my oldest sister was pinching my hand hard enough to draw blood, and then slapped my face twice. I will admit, had our parents not intervened, it is possible I might have retaliated by slapping her back. Shortly after, my oldest sister threatened to call the police, compelling me to withdraw. Though I lost my temper, I did push her hard as she exited towards her car. This confrontation finally made my father realize the profound issues between my oldest sister and me. He began acting as a mediator whenever we had to communicate or whenever we were embroiled in an argument. This was when I began to learn about the motivations behind her behavior. She told our father that her intentions had always been to assist me in avoiding the same mistakes she has made, though if she ever clarified what mistakes she believed I was making, our father never shared that information with me. He advised her to give me space and allow me to make my own errors, which she seems to have attempted to do. Last year, my oldest sister appeared to have a breakthrough of sorts in therapy and sent me a lengthy text explaining her mental health struggles, the rationale behind her treatment of me, and offering her apologies. In addition to wanting to help me, she expressed that she has always viewed me as a younger version of herself and believed she saw me steering towards the same errors she wished to help me avoid. She never perceived her demeanor as condescending or cruel, and our father attempted to clarify this by stating she has a naturally condescending tone, although I am unsure how much he believes that himself. Since that message, she has been distancing herself from me, particularly after I moved into a new apartment with our middle sister and her adopted daughter. She has been genuinely helpful when possible, often acting as a courier between our household and our parents' home when something needed to be transported, but could not be picked up directly. I can tell she is sincerely attempting to improve herself, and while I respect and support her efforts, I find myself uncertain if I can ever find it in my heart to forgive her. I honestly cannot recall a single moment where I felt truly happy in her presence. Most of my vivid recollections of her are filled with pain. At best, even during joyful occasions, her presence was more of a background element, contributing nothing meaningful. We can maintain a cordial atmosphere around one another now, but I sense tension on my part, constantly anticipating when the next conflict might arise. My father, of course, is keen for us to reconcile and support one another, as I am certain he still holds the belief that it will just be the three of you. I am just not convinced it is attainable. Even our middle sister has admitted she is unsure if she can forgive my oldest sister for her past treatment of me, and in a moment of shared understanding, we collectively realized that if my oldest sister were to ever become homeless and seek assistance, we would choose not to help her. We feel that our oldest sister has been overly pampered by our parents throughout her life, as she has never truly been independent. Her life choices seem to crash around her, often leading her back to live with our parents, a pattern that has repeated itself since the three of us moved out. We feel that she has not experienced the harsh realities of life in the same way our middle sister and I have, and our decision not to aid her in a time of need would serve as a wake-up call. I feel as though I am in a battle with myself when pondering the future of our relationship. One part of me longs for reconciliation to make my father proud, while the other part is still reeling from past wounds, leading me to believe that hoping for reconciliation is in vain. So I ask, how can I possibly forgive her? Is it even a possibility at this point? Story 2. I shared a family wedding pic on Reddit. My sister's ex found my long history of posts, used it against us, and now my family is torn apart. This is somewhat obligatory post, even though it isn't actually today's event. In reality, it resembles more of a confession that I have been a bit foolish for around 10 years. But here we go. Prepare yourself, as this will be a lengthy read. My upbringing was remarkably secluded. When I was approximately 5 years old, my family relocated to the summit of a mountain situated in the heart of a desert. This decision was ostensibly made because my parents wished for their future 11 children to experience a life of freedom and adventure. But it was also influenced by the way traditional Catholicism can profoundly affect children who are completely disconnected from the outside world. We would make our way down the mountain for church services each Sunday, and once a month, we would meet with other Catholic homeschoolers at a local park. In some years, we participated in 4-H, but that was largely the limit of my social interactions. I felt a sense of unhappiness, yet I was never entirely certain of the reasons for it. My parents were always quick to assert that my discontent stemmed from demonic influences or spiritual challenges. Then came the internet, the vibrant, diverse, and community-oriented internet. As a teenager, I began taking some online classes and acquired an outdated, bulky laptop to facilitate that. Naturally, I eventually discovered Reddit. At last, I had found a space where I could connect with others, and no one ever had to learn that I was a socially awkward homeschooler clad in an unfashionable long skirt with a terrible haircut. I started by participating in the Catholicism subreddit, keeping it open in one tab in case my parents walked in, while simultaneously exploring other interests in another tab. The liberation of exploration was exhilarating. I immersed myself in history and science, engaged in fandoms, and discovered various podcasters. I came across intriguing terms such as bisexual and even encountered pornography for the first time, and I communicated with actual people, individuals who were neither homeschooled, sheltered, nor even Catholic. I won't sugarcoat it, I expressed some regrettable opinions. For the first solid 6 years I was active on the platform, I was fully invested in the Catholic narrative. If you look deep enough into my history, you would likely find a homophobic, transphobic religious zealot. Honestly, it was quite cringeworthy. I also tended to complain about my family's actions, particularly as I started to recognize just how extraordinarily abnormal and unhealthy my upbringing had been. A word of caution for younger individuals: do not air your family issues on your main account. It may eventually come back to haunt you. Over time, with love and experiences in the real world, I moved past that cringe phase. I distanced myself from the Catholic Church after finally acknowledging the alarming depths of its misogyny, racism, and corruption. I recognized that the appealing term, bisexual, applied to me and began meeting other queer individuals, discovering that they were not the depraved predators I had been led to believe, but rather the most warm-hearted and wonderful group of people I had ever encountered. I uncovered the true facts behind all the pro-life ideologies I had been taught. I read literature about abortion and transgender rights. I connected with people in my local community and began participating in in-person activities after the pandemic eased, and now I volunteer at my local library every week. I came to understand that I am not broken or repulsive, waiting for salvation from an angry deity. I formed genuine friendships and truly began to appreciate myself for the first time. But, as you likely anticipated, there is a significant error to discuss. I made a monumental error by sharing a photograph from my sister's wedding on Reddit. You might assume that this was inconsequential. I thought it was harmless. However, my sister's ex-husband, who has been embroiled in a prolonged custody dispute with her, viewed the situation differently. In fact, he somehow discovered the post and subsequently located my Reddit account. Suddenly, a decade's worth of content was in his hands. He must have sifted through thousands of my posts and comments. He uncovered instances where I expressed dissatisfaction with my childhood, commiserated with others about my family's lingering conservatism after I had transitioned to the liberal side, and even some strange poems regarding conflicts with my sister that I penned at age 18. He combed through posts discussing my fertility challenges and my struggles with faith. Ultimately, he submitted screenshots as evidence to assert that my family was unfit to have contact with the child. By the time I learned about this incident and was advised to delete certain posts, it was far too late. My father had already obtained the screenshots and subsequently found more. My entire family became aware of the situation. My grandparents reached out with messages of shock. Even my aunt, who lives across the country, became involved. Before long, I was inundated with texts from my sister insisting that I needed to claim I was a deranged lunatic, disavowing everything I had said. My mother allegedly drafted a statement for me claiming much the same, according to another sibling who saw it before she attempted to get me to sign it. My sister asserted that she would be unable to regain custody of her child if I did not either testify to being delusional or sign a statement to that effect. However, that would have been perjury, which I refused to accept. I am not insane. I am simply someone who overshares on Reddit who doesn't. And I have been diagnosed with depression who hasn't, but deranged? No. I composed my own statement, delineating everything I have just explained. I was a sheltered individual who misused the internet, and some of my comments made online were expressed without complete awareness of their relevant contexts, but my mistakes were mine alone. Since my sister had made it clear that I needed to label myself as insane, and my mother had already prepared a statement for me, I believed it was wise to communicate my response directly to my sister's attorney, ensuring that nothing could be altered or added without my consent. This choice, it seems, was a grave blunder. I woke up to an email from my sister, incredulous that I would imply a lack of trust in her, would you trust her, stating that I would end up alone without friends or family. She insists on portraying me as mentally unstable in court, since only someone truly unhinged would, according to her, consult a lawyer in a legal matter instead of approaching someone who has seemingly concocted plans to encourage me to commit perjury. It feels as though my entire family has turned against me, and that's how it stands. Overall, you may agree there is not much to be mourned here. And truly, that is the case. The true loss lies in this Reddit account. A decade's worth of karma, 10 years of friendships and carefully crafted content. I will have to begin anew with a different account, ideally one that is more anonymous this time. I am conflicted between abandoning this account completely and repurposing it exclusively for posting writing under the R erotica category, since I now know my father will be scrutinizing all of my posts with disapproval. I might as well embrace that. I would say I will see you all on the other side, but I sincerely hope that I am not found in any capacity. I am ready to revert to being just another faceless entity in the Reddit community, and this time I intend to remain that way. Summary: I utilized Reddit as if it were my personal diary for a decade, but much like what occurred with my actual diary when I was 10, my family discovered it, and it has essentially fractured our relationships. Story 3. I, F19, have a very different love language from my boyfriend, M30, and am worried we aren't compatible. I suppose, after I provide some context regarding the situation, my question for you all will be whether there are any strategies I can adopt to feel content with the way he expresses affection. Alternatively, I would appreciate any insights that could help me understand his viewpoint better and allow me to stop overthinking this matter. Some background. My boyfriend, whom I will refer to as John, and I have been together for a year. We initially met through a volunteer fire department that I joined when I was 16, and he has been a member since the age of 17. I quickly became very involved in this fire department, taking numerous classes and dedicating a significant amount of my time there. John also invested a lot of time there, and I joined his group, becoming closest to him and 2 other individuals. John and I share a similar sense of humor and interests, and I felt a strong attraction to him, even though I kept it hidden for some time. Eventually, he began showing interest in me. This occurred after I turned 18, of course. To cut a long story short, we began dating. I soon recognized that the dynamic of our relationship placed me in the position of being the one to pursue him. He is a very laid-back person, and his methods of expressing love reflect this. Unfortunately, as a rather emotional and romantic woman, I started to feel somewhat dissatisfied. I yearned for the feeling of him pursuing me or performing sweet gestures to capture my attention or, perhaps, win me over. I realize this may sound immature, but I hope someone can relate to my feelings. For instance, at the beginning of our relationship, he crafted a charming wooden heart for me around Valentine's Day. It didn't take him long, and I have treasured it ever since. I truly cherish that gift. However, he has not done anything like that since. Now, onto the issues that have been bothering me, regardless of how much I try to disregard them. Many of these concerns are minor things that I have noticed, but they seem to have accumulated over time. He never expresses that he misses me and only reciprocates, "I love you," after I say it first. He is not interested in discussing our future or any details, although he does occasionally mention wanting children and thinks I would make a wonderful mother. He is not affectionate at all in public. He won't even hold my hand or rest his hand on my leg if we are sitting together. However, he enjoys and expects me to be physically affectionate with him whenever we are out. If I am not overly affectionate one day, he quickly assumes something is wrong and reminds me that the affectionate version of me is the one he fell in love with. He clearly understands the appeal of receiving small gestures of affection from a partner, and while he expects me to provide that, he does not reciprocate. He only visits my home when I invite him, even though at times I simply wish to spend private time together, away from the social environment of the firehouse. It often feels like we are playing a sort of cat and mouse game, where I feel as if I am pleading to see him or spend time together, and then he eventually agrees to come over. He has informed me multiple times, after I raised these concerns, that he finds it difficult to be emotionally vulnerable. He enjoys the feeling of being pursued by a woman and appreciates the thrill of the chase. He reassured me that he loves me but expresses it in different manners. To give you a more comprehensive perspective, I will mention a few ways in which he demonstrates love. He assisted me in obtaining my first car when I was in a challenging living situation, and he has helped me maintain it since, as he is much more mechanically inclined than I am. However, this creates some complications because I do not believe that helping with my car absolves him from needing to show love in other ways. I do not think I should assume he loves me merely because of that. He has been incredibly supportive of my academic and career decisions and frequently offers me valuable life advice. When we are alone or in private settings, he can be very affectionate and cuddly, holding me closely and kissing me. He does compliment my appearance fairly often. However, I sometimes wonder if those compliments are influenced by his arousal, because reality suggests that whenever he is at my home, we often engage in intimate activities. I have addressed this with him numerous times, and each time it concludes with him asserting that he does love me and wants to improve the ways he expresses that love. He asks for specific examples of actions he could take, and I do my best to provide guidance. Yet, in truth, I have not seen any of those suggestions put into practice. A month ago, I jokingly mentioned Valentine's Day and inquired if he would plan anything for the occasion. He became serious and questioned why the man always has to do something. I had developed a plan and begun gathering materials for a gift I intended to make for him. However, after hearing his response and his implication that he would not be doing anything special, I abandoned my idea and decided not to celebrate the holiday. I dislike the thought of him perceiving me as materialistic or simply seeking more gifts, but I genuinely believe that thoughtfulness and care go a long way. Summary. So that's my situation. I am a very affectionate woman who considers it essential to express love verbally and physically. Since he does not perceive this in the same way, it leads to complications. I do not feel that I am being hypocritical in my desire for love and affection. I want this to be mutual. I acknowledge that I am younger than he is, which may contribute to our differing perspectives. Additionally, I experienced a somewhat traumatic childhood due to my parents, and I no longer have a relationship with either of them. My greatest fear is that I am overanalyzing everything due to immaturity and trauma. I need someone to clarify whether my concerns are valid or if I am merely overreacting and need to address my own issues. If my concerns are indeed valid, what are constructive ways to raise them and potentially encourage him to reach a compromise with me? I do not want to break up. I truly love him. Thank you to anyone who took the time to read this. TLDR, I am extremely affectionate, both verbally and physically, while my boyfriend is not. He does not recognize its importance, despite my numerous discussions on the topic. However, he becomes upset if I match his lack of affection.